I am from Belgium, right? I'm from the same university that Nassens was, one of the guys that trained me. But I'm working in Luxembourg, which is right next door. And I've been for a short while now. I did a renal transplant fellowship at MGH.
Oh.
And actually the thing I'm pitching has already been pitched to Ivy Rosales and Veronica Clapez, who I told them about this meeting too late. So I don't think they're going to be here.
Okay.
And yeah, I moved here and just started looking for research opportunities, basically.
Yeah.
Great. And because, well, I can explain whenever everyone's there, but Luxembourg is very big on like secure data storage and supercomputing and that kind of stuff. That's kind of a national research priority here. So there's a lot of hardware in place to do interesting things with.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Well, that would be awesome if you have something, because we, it's so hard, and plus with Europe and America trying to figure out the international regulations and things, if you have a good way, we do have, Joran van der Lack, I think is going to really help us with a potentially like a competition or trial, if that works out. But yeah, we'd love to hear what you have, possibilities you have, and
yeah, for sure.
I think Dr. Levinson just joined. So
yes.
Thank you.
Sure, it's a little after 7 here. I'd say my IQ is hovering around 82 or 83 at the moment.
Okay. Well, we look forward to the exponential increase in your IQ that will occur at any moment now. So
Thank you.
We may not get that many people because it's the holiday season, and we are recording. As a matter of fact, I think we're recording on my computer, which is quite exciting. So you could actually proceed, Thomas, and tell us about your stuff. And even though there are only like 4 of us now, eventually, you can imagine this recording will be watched by thousands, so.
That's good. No pressure.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, I have I could do it all oral, but I have a PowerPoint just to spruce things up a bit. So why don't I share my screen?
Sure.
Awesome. Oh yeah, let me see if I can. Do I need to give you some sort of? I think you should be able to do it. I think I have.
Okay, just do it like this. Yeah.
Great.
You guys just have to let me know if when I advance the slides, whether they're actually advancing, because sometimes that's a Teams thing, I think. All right, so like I said, for Dr. Levinson, who I haven't introduced myself yet, I'm Thomas Vanhove. I'm a nephrologist who trained in Belgium with Martha Nassens, did a renal transplant fellowship in Boston, and I've now been for a short while, well, I recently moved to Luxembourg. I had this idea for the project that I'm about to explain at the end when I was at MGH, and I also, because I started looking at how to get grants, for medical research in Luxembourg, and actually you have to be very specific to fit within certain national research priorities. You can't just submit anything that you find interesting, and a lot of it has to do with data and AI and supercomputing and that kind of stuff. And they actually have a category called digital learning and human-machine interface, which I think fit well with things that I already found interesting. And so I'm in the process of writing a grant for that specific category. The idea being to develop a digital platform for learning renal pathology. Digital as in browser-based, just pull up your browser and everything happens there. That is all about annotations. I know that the very first research project that I did when I was in med school was a whole summer annotating digital slides. So I know what that's like. And I've been very interested in it ever since. And I feel like even though no one likes generating annotations, they are very useful. And I think not only for training algorithms, but probably other stuff too. I feel like we're probably underutilizing annotations as it stands, because they could probably, or a set of high quality annotated slides would probably be a very good teaching tool as well, just because it's so granular and detail oriented, and small details in renal pathology often are often important, right? And I'll get back to this. I think it could also be for the community a way to get people to converge more in how they read slides and to increase inter-observer agreements. So the idea would be I'll talk about the hardware side in a bit, to have a database of whole slide images, right? And then annotations. You could have multiple annotations per slide. That would even be interesting for a lot of applications. But so let's say that in this case, this has been annotated by an expert in blue for some research projects in the past. And then there's also perhaps segmenting that's been done by an algorithm. The idea would be that for a fellow or junior pathologist or someone interested in using this, they would pull up the entire slides in their browser and would be asked for part of that to perform certain assignments that would all essentially involve annotating, right? It could be easy stuff that could, at this point in time, could largely be done by an algorithm already, like segmenting, or it could be, more interesting for that demographic probably would be qualifiers, for example, right? Right-click on the tubule and choose the degree of atrophy, that kind of stuff, or it could be very detail-oriented, click on all the mononuclear cells, those types of things. That person would then be generating annotations as they go through these steps. The idea would be that it would be, not the whole slide, obviously, but like a short couple of minutes worth of work. And that if you have a sort of curated data set to begin with, or something that's been well annotated by an expert, that user could get immediate feedback from, well, this is how you annotated it, and this is what the expert thought. You could see them side by side and immediately get like very granular feedback about, I missed this, or etc. I think that could be a useful way of supplementing your training in renal pathology, with the added benefit that person also has generated, perhaps not perfect, but still generated annotations in the process. And the fact of having these multiple annotations of the same slide, I think could be very useful. So you start thinking about how, yeah, go ahead.
It suddenly occurred to me that, that could get old in a hurry. But every time I go on certain sites, before they let me go through, I have to click on 9 panels that says, click on every panel as a taxi in it. And, it only takes me 10 seconds. But I have to do it every single time. And so it's possible you could sort of motivate this not as a giant sit down for 4 hours and do this, but every time you go here, you just have to do a little bit more annotation to get through to the website.
That is also a great idea. Yeah, like tiny micro tasks, if you will.
Exactly.
If you will. Yeah, is this glom? Yeah, is it sclerosed or not? Or exactly. There are many possibilities. What I'm thinking is that it could be useful for junior pathologists. People with more training could probably still get a lot out of a system like this. A lot of people are not full-time renal pathologists and may be interested in using this to get exposure to rare pathology that they normally wouldn't see, perhaps. I'm also thinking about people in developing countries who may not have access to the same kind of training that people in Europe and the US may get. And it could also be a way, if you develop, because the idea would obviously be that this platform would be developed by an actual software engineer, right? So it would be as smooth as possible, as slick as possible a user experience. It could potentially be a way for organizations like Banff, when they try to harmonize the way pathologists score transplant biopsies, to just do it through the existing platform. You send out a link to a number of slides and you have them pre-annotated, and then people can compare the way they annotated to the the gold standards that you have prepared. And it would be very granular, which is kind of the point, probably. You could also, if you have enough people using at the same time, like a group of people who regularly interact with the program, you could track them longitudinally to see, does that mean they will start to converge over time, which is also a worthwhile goal, I think, in itself, is to see whether is that a way that we can reduce the community's kappa value, so to speak. It would certainly be easy to track. And then for research, and this kind of ties in with what Dr. Levins had said, you could you could tweak the system to make it a net generator of annotations, right? Or you could say, what if the person, the junior pathologist using it, 90% of the time they get feedback from an expert annotated slide, but 10% of the time they just get a virgin slide and they get no feedback. That's kind of the price they pay to use the platform, perhaps. If enough people are on the platform, then those small amounts add up, and you would have a net generation of a lot of annotations, with the idea obviously being that those would get stored in a central repository and be made freely available to everyone, so that a lot of people can have access to a lot of annotations to start training their models on. And I'll get back to that, but that's a big part of this, obviously, is that if you want to build something like this, and what would happen in Luxembourg is mainly just the hardware side, the computer science side of things, you have to set up the hardware to match. And so even if, and that would make it easy to have that double as a sort of central repository that everyone obviously would like to exist. But that costs money too, and that would be funded by this grant. Then you could think of sort of community aspects to a platform like this. For example, if you have multiple junior pathologists that have scored the same slide, you could envision the program automatically detecting areas of high discrepancy, hard spots, if you will, things that users tend to disagree on, and those could be automatically detected and bumped up to participating expert pathologists, so that they would only sort of arbitrate difficult items, right? So they won't be asked to annotate stuff that an algorithm could do, but only the high yield stuff where many people tend to disagree. You could envision, a lot of things are possible for a platform like this, even a sort of forum function where people, if they struggle with real life cases, they upload them anonymously, annotate an area that that they find challenging, and then ask the community, what do you guys think about this? And that everything would kind of happen through annotating, so that all of this is not only useful as a sort of teaching tool or a discussion tool, but you're generating annotations in the process. As it stands, so there is a computer scientist that's on board for this, that would be a co-investigator, who's writing the grant with me, who's a machine learning expert here in Luxembourg, who, the way he sees it, he would have a computer science PhD just make the sort of front end of the system, adapt QPath most likely, and have the whole thing be browser based, to integrate, because obviously that's pretty boring stuff for a computer scientist. So what they're most interested in, it would be to, as much as possible, integrate existing algorithms, functionalities into that platforms. For example, segmenting. That stuff exists already, right? The Buffalo Group has a site up that does something like that. But so that existing algorithms could be integrated into it as easily as possible. And then on the hardware side, which I think is one of the selling points, like I said, this is a national priority here. There is a supercomputer of the University of Luxembourg that's already been settled. We would be allowed to use part of it, that has petabytes of storage capacity, and I am told would have no problem running a platform like this with a lot of users concurrently uploading and downloading stuff very smoothly, and would have virtually limitless scalability to act as a sort of repository for slides and for annotations. So that is what would happen here, because that's kind of what people are good at here. There's not a lot of renal pathology in Luxembourg, so although Ivy Rosales and Veronica Clopez are on board and have said that they would be willing to help upload slides and test the platform as it goes through development, and give feedback to that computer, to the software engineer, about what does this thing need to be able to do. Clearly, it would be preferable to get more, or as many pathologists as possible, to think about just the project and what it would need to look like, but also potentially commit, as in if groups have annotated batches of slides in the past, that they would potentially commit to uploading them to that program once it's up and running, or to find people who would say that they would also be interested in helping test the platform as it goes through development, because obviously there would be a significant, especially in the beginning, curating that we need to be done, right? Like selecting slides and potentially annotating some of them to get kind of something to start with before, hopefully, if there's enough critical mass that's attained, it starts to, it keeps going more on its own. Yeah, so that's kind of where we stand. And there are many, I think, questions that that would be interesting to ask here, because there may not be one single good answer. Like if you create something like this that doubles as a central repository for people, and you want it to be open source, so any group that wants to start training algorithms can access the slides and the annotations, and they don't have to start sourcing those themselves. What kind of license would you have that have? Would it be would you prevent people from using those annotations to create any commercial applications, or would you leave that door open? Would you allow anyone to batch download everything you have, or would there be some kind of vetting process? Would you want, and that's mainly just, I mean, that's possible, but it would just be a lot of work, add the option to go beyond just anonymized slides and add patient data, so you could start doing outcome research, but then you would have to, jump through the GDPR and HIPAA hoops. So yeah, I'm just interested in hearing, or if some of your members would be interested. Yes, but Kers at least has said that he would have no problem reading the proposal and giving some feedback about these sort of remaining questions, or if you think that the idea needs tweaking or additions that you would, or things that you would like to add to it. Yeah, that's
okay. It sounds like a nice match for the specialized focus that Luxembourg seems to have. But I have a question which may sort of not undermine, but not take advantage of that, but it's fairly current, which is the notion of federated learning. And federated learning is where the data never leaves the individual site, but training happens locally, but let's say the weights of the AI training get accumulated centrally, which I think is the opposite of what you're proposing. But it seems to have certain, it gets around a lot of the logistics and the problems of data security when the data itself, or the primary data, never leaves its origination site. So my question is basically, have you thought about that at all? And is that sort of orthogonal to what you're doing, or complementary?
No, that hadn't been considered before. No. The idea would be more, or the idea as it stands is more to have the thing double as a sort of repository that anyone can access. I think if it's just the slides, then what I'm hearing from pathologists is that that will probably be fine. I mean, there are articles out there that have the one that's based on the Neptune data. I think everything is on a server. You can download all of those, parts of the slides, so that would not necessarily be a problem. Obviously, once you start adding any kind of patient information, it's a whole different. It's much more complicated. Obviously, not impossible, but.
Right.
Because it's just, so what you're saying is the annotations are online, but the slides they don't get uploaded centrally. Is that how that would work?
It's and I'm not an expert in this, but I was contacted by one of the founders of an Israeli company called Rhino. I forget what they're called, Rhino Science or something. Whose basic story is that they manage the plumbing of doing federated learning. And I actually, Pinaki and Kwang-Yung Jen, who are my colleagues, and Pinaki's at Buffalo, apparently have an archive would-be paper on this, and I can send it to you so you can get a sense of it. But I think it's worth even thinking about in the context of the grant, and compare and contrast. But what goes on is that the data lives locally, and it's not that the annotations go anywhere, is that there's an actual learning engine local. So this is very different from what you're talking about. And the learning engine learns the weights that drive the whatever it is, the algorithm, and only those weights go centrally and get aggregated. Well, the idea is that then your algorithm would then be sort of validated to work in Luxembourg and Buffalo and UC Davis without any data itself leaving the institutions.
Yeah. Well, that's very interesting too. I just don't know if that would be compatible with the aspect of, people pulling up slides to learn from them, because then those slides have to be, the idea would also be that anyone, anywhere in the world, could have access to those, that curated batch of slides and perform some assignments on them.
No, I agree. As I said, it's sort of the opposite of what you're proposing, but I think it's something that you need to think about and mention in the grants, even to say, and we're not doing that. But
yeah, to indicate that we've considered the possibility.
Right.
I mean, yeah, this thing kind of, glues several things together, right? It's it would be the learning platform and what the system that you would have to put in place to make something like that happen. The interface with your browser and the hardware would open the door for, would be a central repository. You wouldn't even have to change much. It could just double as that. So the other question would be, I haven't gotten around to that, but it's also what Jesper said. You could try to contact people who have done the big studies in the field in the last couple of years and who have these annotations and these slides, and ask them, would you be willing to, well, we'd have to see whether, everything would be compatible, but would you be willing to upload those slides so that other people can use them as well, right? Or potentially, if you have the front end of the system that's smoother, if you will, or more user-friendly than the stuff that's currently out there, then potentially you could say this could be an annotation tool where if you, for your own research, you want to annotate stuff, the easiest would be to just do it through that platform, and you have your annotations, but they also keep living in the repository, right? And then other people can use them as well, if you're okay with that, obviously. So it could be a way for people who are doing projects to kind of ensure that what they are doing, they don't have to worry about, and how are we going to make this available to other people? It's kind of like that system's been put into place, and we've thought about the legal aspects and everything, and you can just, if you annotate through that platform, then you're okay, and you can make it available to other groups who maybe don't have as much data as you do.
And how is, I don't know nothing about it, but how is this data different, or this proposal different from PathLake?
Well, does that have, the central thing here would be the learning platform aspect of it, right? And potentially leveraging the fact that you have junior pathologists or pathologists in training working on it, who are generating annotations, right? It's not only the storage side of things. Let's say the key component of it would be, can you get people involved, or can you turn, can the act of annotating be more about learning and teaching rather than just generating the annotations for research's sake, right? If you have expert pathologists that are participating in this program and they feel like, when I get asked to annotate something, it's because other people struggled with it, so I'm giving them feedback and they're getting something out of it that may be more intrinsically rewarding than only annotating because, an algorithm is going to be trained on that data. So the core experience is more about learning and teaching.
Does this have a lifespan? In other words, once you've annotated 1,000 slides, you're done. Once you've annotated 10,000, when does this stop?
That was gone for 5 seconds. You were saying?
I'm just saying, what is there a lifespan to this? You know, if you have 5,000 annotated slides, are you done? If you have 10,000, are you done? You know, what's the end game, or is there one?
There would be no like predefined goal of how much it needs to generate. Like ideally, it would become a sort of community supported, self-sustaining ecosystem after a while, where people who want to supplement their training in renal pathology can go online and then maybe select from types of pathology. Like I would like to see some, it's not only transplant pathology, obviously, although Banff is a very good place to start. You say, I want to see some lupus nephritis, and that would, just stay online. Obviously, at some point, it becomes less and less important, maybe to have more and more annotations, but they would ideally keep getting generated as part of the process. So no, there's no end game. It's just a repository that could potentially keep growing so that, people who have access to a lot of annotations, other people's annotations all at once. So if you want to start doing research, you don't have to start from scratch, or you don't have to motivate a whole bunch of pathologists to, to start annotating. But that's kind of, that is secondary, though. It would be a big benefit, I guess, because you could tack it onto the project. It doesn't even really increase the cost. You would have to put that infrastructure into place anyway to get something like this functioning. So it could do both. It could also be a central repository, but it wouldn't maybe necessarily have to do that. But like I said, it's
I think it sounds
that
like
would already be in place.
I mean, your idea is really great. And I think like Dr. Levinson saying, I think we don't just have one solution to what we want to do. There are multiple sites. Eventually, we could have a federated platform too, like he's proposing. But I think we can have multiple. We already have kind of a very simple one, but it doesn't. It's not very rich and like human. Now, basically, we just have animal data right there now, just kind of as a trial. So yours is a lot more exciting, and the federated model sounds amazing too. And I think there's not just one solution for what we want to do, and like your proposal is really great.
Thanks. So I was thinking, well, we'll see then afterwards if some other people, I'm going to discuss it with Martin too, because he said he wasn't going to be here today, so I'll have a separate meeting with him. I'm also trying to get, like, part of it is also just like making the project attractive and, having potentially more pathologists endorse it or something, or having the work group of Banff endorse it. They can only help, obviously, increase the chances for this project to get funded. But there's also just the project proposal as it is, people who are open to it, to perhaps read it and give feedback, to make sure that not only its chances of funding, that's part of it, obviously, but also to make sure that the way it's conceived is a way that, suits the needs of the community, or that, that makes sense. So obviously I'm not a pathologist. I've been active in digital pathology, but it's not quite the same, right?
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, I mean, we provided, letters of support or whatever, and I think we'd definitely be willing to do that. And then also, Dr. Solez, Kim and I were talking before, and we have a web page now, and also a Twitter site that we put up.
We were
other
on there.
things.
Yeah.
So we could definitely, and actually, I don't know if I added you to the Slack yet. I can add you to the Slack that we have. It's kind of not been very active, but we could definitely try to ever use that for communication. I try to check it. So there are multiple ways, and so we could definitely, broadcast your initiative once it's ready, and we could support it before, as it's going through and help you with your proposal, but also be involved at all stages. So
Yeah, that sounds great. The deadline is end of April. So for the submission, I mean, so there's time to get all of this sorted out. And okay, practically speaking, there are a number of specific questions, I guess, like the license, because I talked about this with Jesper too, and he said, you know, this is a big one, right? You can either have it be like a general purpose license where you prohibit people from monetizing in any way anything related to the project ever.
Mm-hmm.
But he said, you know, that might not be ideal, because at some point, if it does work and you want to turn it into a professional type product, then that's kind of, you know, limiting your options. So there are some specific questions that require some expertise, I guess. I don't think I have the answers to all of those questions. Could there be a way, or through the Slack then or something, what could be the way that I could sort of address this to members of the group to get their ideas about stuff like that?
So like today's recording, I will edit it so it starts with you presenting this. And I think that's a good starting point. And
Yeah,
then
for sure.
you can, you know, refer back to that URL as you talk about it further. And probably also you can join us here when we have a lot more people. Like, you know, this is a semi-holiday season and we hadn't really advertised anything big today. So there are relatively few people, but sometimes this place really is hopping, you know, all sorts of, you know, amazing people. You see names and they don't even get to talk, but, you know, that had just, you know, a fantastic, you know, array of really important people here. So you could come back again, talk about it again also, you know, so that. Yeah.
And I didn't want to put any pressure on you, but, you know, because I didn't realize you were going to you had your PowerPoint ready and everything, but next time I could put that in the email that goes out to, like, we have about 30 people, and we could put that in the email that you're going to be presenting, and you know, we can.
Yeah, definitely. I have no problem. I mean, the more people can give feedback, and like the people in this working group, I was telling Kim, are like the perfect people to ask these kind of questions. You know, no one's better placed. So I would have zero problem presenting the same thing again and seeing what people's thoughts are.
I know Dr. Levinson knows a lot about the licensing. What do you think about that licensing questions he asked about keeping it open versus?
I don't have anything substantive to add. What I do want to raise the question, which just occurred to me, I think it's unanswered in the field, is why do we have 2 kidneys but only 1 liver?
Well, it's a size thing, right? I mean, there's not room in the abdomen really for 2 equal sized livers probably, and the liver is more prone to injury. It's not quite as tough. You know, like when you're skiing down a hill, your kidneys are sort of bouncing around. You know, the liver is a little bit more vulnerable to injury than kidneys.
Yeah. I don't think it's an urgent question, but we do have bilateral organs and then unilateral organs, spleen and liver and bladder. But I don't think it's an urgent medical question.
The liver has
what's becoming urgent that's quite amusing is transplanting pig organs. The kidney's fine because even though the kidney grows to the size of a pig kidney, there's room in the abdomen for that. But for the heart and lungs, it really doesn't work because the pig heart is too big for the the pericardium and the pig lungs are too big for the thoracic rib cage. Finally, once they grow, and that's really the limiting factor when we get into pig organs, as it looks like we are going to do. So you may think you asked a stupid question, but it isn't. These, considerations of what fits where is quite important long term.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The regenerative capacity of the livers, I mean, I'm not sure, but it seems like it's very high. But the heart, you only have one, and the regenerative capacity that's kind of limited, I think. I mean, maybe not even as much as the kidney. So
you can think of alternative evolution, like the octopus has multiple hearts, right? So there are animals that are potentially smarter than we are. The reason I've never had an octopus as a pet is I read about it, realized it would make my life a living hell because it can find ways to sort of terrorize you. Like any hole the size of the squid's eyes, it can get through. It can go out and visit other parts of your home when you're sleeping, and then come back to the tank and do all sorts of crazy things. But they have multiple hearts. So yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
So is your model working? Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt. Sorry.
No, nothing. I was just being silly. Please continue.
So Thomas, is your model working now? Basically, is it you have a working?
No, not yet. So like I said, it would probably, the first place would probably be to adapt QPath or something similar, but QPath seems the most logical place to start, which is already written in JavaFX, so it shouldn't be hard to port to something that could work in a browser. But I dabble in Python, but I'm not able to do something like that myself. So no, there would not be. I mean, that would be great too, obviously, to have like be able to do a performance or to demonstrate how it would work. Certainly, what I envision is something that looks like it was designed by Apple. Like a very professional-looking, sleek experience, but it would be developed by a computer science person. So there's not going to be any.
Oh, sorry. You might check into something called Napari, Napari. I don't know much about it, but it's
Write that down.
Python-based image annotation and manipulation platform, and claims to be faster than Java-based things because Python. And it's being developed here in the San Francisco area. And I would just take a look at it, but it may give your proposal a technological sheen.
For sure, yeah. I mean, it's always good. You never know who's going to read these proposals, right?
Yeah.
So it's good to cover your bases and show that you were at least aware of everything that's on the market.
Exactly.
Yeah, and
yeah, thanks
I
for
think
that.
you'll probably want to screenshot to show in your proposal of the, sort of like the mock-up of what it's going to be doing or how it's going to function.
Yeah, there's something in there like kind of what I showed you, just with the slides and then the annotations and the colors to illustrate in case someone is asked to review it who's not really in that field. But yeah, I could think about, you could do that manually, right? Just have a renal slide and then add things in and get an idea of what that interface would look like. But clearly, it would be an iterative thing where pathologists would need to give feedback to that to that software engineer, because I mean, they don't know all the functionalities it needs to have, right? So that would be part of like the first year of the project, is just getting something that pathologists find easy to use and like using.
So
And
why
the
don't you,
competition thing is interesting. Go ahead.
yeah, why don't you put your email in the chat so I can send you the link to this video and so on, and we can keep in touch. Yeah.
And
That's
then
great.
I think he's been added to the, yeah, you're officially part of our group too, so.
Yeah.
That's great.
Good.
I'm not
So,
on
yeah.
the Slack yet, but yeah,
Okay,
I'll check
yeah,
it out.
I'll add you, yeah, that's a good, I'll add you to the Slack too. Yeah, I can definitely do that. And and that actually has a lot of our old, sort of videos. I haven't been putting some of the recent ones because some people sometimes say, well, they want to, they have some work that they didn't want broadcast yet because it hadn't been published. But other people, we do have a lot of our old, and there's some permission issues. So if you ever have any trouble with that, because sometimes the way I stored some videos on Slack, but others I've stored on the OneDrive because I have a lot more space there. But yeah, I can definitely, you can look back through our conversation. It's semi-organized, and I probably
Yeah,
should
I'll definitely check them out.
Oh,
Yeah.
I just found the Napari site, and it made me think about something else. But it says Napari is a fast, interactive, multi-dimensional image viewer for browsing, annotating, and analyzing large multi-dimensional images. And the reason that sort of resonated is that the world, at least the science technology side, is moving to multi-omics and spatial omics, and looking at 10, 20, 30 different immunostains on a single slide. And I'm sure there's a lot of activity in the renal world, or there should be. And so it's possible that you may start with standard hematoxin eosin stain slides, but you should be future proof, because there may be new imaging approaches or new immunostaining approaches that you should be able to accommodate without breaking.
No, that's a very good point, and I should put that in the proposal too. Is that the thing should be designed that it's not going to become cripplingly slow if you want to add other dimensions or to it later on. Definitely.
Yep.
Although,
okay.
Yeah, I've been in contact with some person. I haven't heard back from him yet, but ways of building images so that they have sort of like a blockchain attached, so you can have some sort of like audit trail or within the image or somehow attached. I'm not sure exactly, but there's this person in Germany who has this, and I'm trying to get him to talk to the group. But I haven't heard back from him yet. But his name is let's see, Niels Grabe. Niels Grabe. Actually have a little bit of his. Here's our thing for. Oh wait, this is. Let's see. I have his little bit of his. Here's our presentation for today, but I'll just jump down to, this is the guy.
Yeah, okay.
Right there. Yeah. So, yeah, seems like a interesting guy. So hopefully I'll hear back from. I just emailed him earlier this week, so he could be on vacation or something. But,
Yeah, I think he's a part of a lot of projects, so he could be pretty busy.
I think, yeah, I think so. It's pretty amazing what he's doing. But but we do have a Twitter page now. I was just going to show this, and now we can think about hashtags and other things, and basically we've just been going through a lot of things. Our main goals are to have this sort of image bank and then a platform to share algorithms, and then a competition or trials. So we've been working on all these, and you know, having several solutions for each of these is going to be totally fine. So yours could be just another one that we have in this collection of image banks and platforms.
Yeah, of course. They don't have to, you know, they're not mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
You can host things on multiple sites.
So I was thinking, you know, in 2 weeks is December the 23rd. So that might also run into, I'm not actually even sure
Probably.
where I'm going to be.
I don't think I'm going to be there.
Yeah. So I think the next one would be, we're keeping on our 2-week thing, is January the 6th. Does that sound good?
Yeah,
That would be our,
that's a civilized date.
and that would get everyone back on our routine. We can have some New Year's resolutions. And that would get everyone back.
No. We need New Year's super resolutions.
That's right.
Yeah.
Super imposition, yeah.
Yeah. And so that would,
Quantum New Year's, yeah.
yeah, quantum leap. Yeah. And yeah, if you want to speak again, then we can see, you know, I could actually, you know, I could start broadcasting it now that you're gonna speak there. Would
Yeah,
you
I
want?
can, you know, at the end, I mean, I don't want to like hog all of the, you know, space that there is, but at the end of the program, if there's time, I would love to, you know, get it out there and hear people's thoughts. So I'm good for January 6th.
Okay, good. Yeah, maybe what I can do is give a brief 10-minute update of what we've been doing with the Twitter and the web page, and we have a Gmail and everything. And then, you know, 5 to 10 minutes is all we need for that. And then you could have you know, the middle part, and then we can have discussion. We usually spend the last time like we have here discussing things, and it's been great. And as Kim said, we've had more amazing discussions.
Yeah,
No,
look
that's
forward to it.
really something to look forward to. And the CFAR grant that I'm working on is due the day before, so I'll be in a mood to celebrate because that
That's good.
big thrust will be over on the 6th. Yeah, so that's great.
It's
Okay,
always
well,
great when you,
yeah.
Farewell.
Sounds like a plan. Yeah.
yeah, it does. Well, y'all have a nice holiday, and I'll send out the announcement for the next one. And yeah, y'all have a
Sounds
nice-
great. Okay.
Happy New
Yeah,
Year.
sounds
Yeah.
great.
Thanks for joining.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye.